The truck had been running since before sunrise. Corbett Holden had left Casper, Wyoming in the dark before the town stirred, before the gas stations lit their signs, before there was any light at all except what the headlights made. He drove south, then east the way you drive, when the direction matters less than the moving. Huck was on the passenger seat with his chin on the door handle and his eyes half closed, not sleeping, just present. The way old dogs are when they have decided their whole job is to be near you and they are taking it seriously. Corbett had not turned it on the radio since Amarillo. The silence was fine, better than fine. Silence did not need anything from him. It just sat there and let him drive, which was all he needed from it right now. 39 years old, a duffel bag in the truck bed, a dog who trusted him more than he deserved, and a letter from Carver County folded into the glove compartment that he had been carrying for 6 days without opening a second time, because once had been enough to understand what it meant. Final notice. Property tax delinquency. Parcel 4412, Holden Road, Carver County, Georgia. 30 days to settle the outstanding balance or the county would move to auction. He had read it twice in the parking lot of a hardware store in Casper on a Tuesday morning, sitting on the tailgate eating a sandwich that tasted like the plastic it came wrapped in. Huck watching him with that patient expression. He had given the last of the sandwich to Huck and sat there a long time watching a man stack lumber across the lot with the rhythm of someone who had done this 10,000 times and stopped thinking about it years ago. 10 years. He had been getting letters from that address for 10 years. Letters from the county, from the estate attorney, from a woman at the Carver County Records Office, whose handwriting slanted left and whose patience somehow made everything worse. He read every one, folded them back, drove another 200 miles in whatever direction felt least like backward. He was not proud of it. He just could not stop doing it until Casper, until Tuesday, until 30 days, until he had run out of directions. So he turned south, then east, then south again. The flashback never came gradually. It never did. Just a phone ringing in the dark. 3 in the morning. His bunk at a naval station in Virginia. Sheets still warm. Room smelling like floor wax and old coffee. A voice he did not recognize saying his parents' names. Highway 16. December. Black ice. The words impact and instantaneous, and I'm so sorry. He had sat on the edge of that bunk a long time. Then he had gone to the bathroom and held both hands under cold water until they stopped shaking. He never went back to that bunk. 6 weeks later, his service ended. He should have driven south. Back to Georgia, back to the farmhouse, back to the place where his mother still had his childhood drawings in the kitchen drawer and his father's work boots stood by the back door shaped to his feet. He should have. Instead, he drove north, then west, took jobs that needed hands and did not ask questions, slept in the truck more nights than not. Huck came into his life 2 years after a brindlehound mix from a shelter outside Knoxville, who chose Corbett by the simple method of sitting directly on his feet and refusing to move until the paperwork was signed. He kept getting the letters. He kept not answering. Until Casper. Until 30 days. Until there was no more road between him and the one place he had never been able to make himself go back to. Now Georgia. The highway thinning out. Pine trees and red dirt and fence posts leaning the same direction like they had all agreed on something years ago and just kept at it out of habit. The sky that pale early morning color that could not decide between gray and gold. Carver County coming up on the signs. A gas station with one pump working. A diner with a hand-painted sign missing a letter. A post office that looked like it was built in 1942 and painted once since. The kind of small town that exists between bigger towns. He pulled in for gas. The woman behind the counter glanced at him, then at Huck, through the window, then back at Corbett with the expression of someone who had been reading strangers for 30 years and kept the results to herself. Passing through numb. She nodded. Did not push. Small town people were good at that. They knew when an answer meant exactly what it said. He bought coffee, held a cup of water for Huck in the parking lot while the dog drank. Then they got back in the truck and turned onto Holden Road. The road was familiar in the worst way. The way you recognize a song you have not heard in years. You do not remember knowing it until it starts. And then you know every note, every turn, and some part of you wishes you had stayed in the parking lot a little longer. The Beckett farm on the left with the rusted mailbox. The stand of longleaf pines that had grown taller than he remembered. The low dip in the road where water collected every winter, the one his mother used to call the Devil's Puddle, because she had driven into it twice, and considered it a personal failing of the road's character. He passed the dip slowly. Huck sat up, and then the house came into view. Corbett took his foot off the gas. The truck slowed almost on its own, like it understood this required a different speed. Here is the thing about 10 years. When you stay away from a place that long, you build a picture. You cannot help it. The mind needs something to hold. So you construct a version. Roof caved in somewhere. Windows gone. Front porch rotted through. 10 years of Georgia summers with nobody home. You prepare yourself for a specific kind of damage. The damage of a place that gave up waiting. He had been carrying that picture since Casper. It was wrong. The fence was standing, not perfectly patched in two spots with lumber that did not quite match, but standing. The front door was on its hinges. The porch steps were solid, and smoke thin and steady was rising from the chimney. Not a fire someone had just lit. A fire that had been going for hours. A fire that belonged to a morning routine. A chicken coop in the side yard. His parents had never had chickens. This one was uneven, clearly built without a blueprint. But the chickens inside were real and calm, making their unhurried sounds like they had always been there. A shovel leaning against the oak tree by the driveway, like someone had set it down an hour ago. Corbett stopped the truck at the gate. He sat there. Huck looked at him. "Yeah," Corbett said. He got out. The gravel under his boots made the same sound it always had, that particular crunch of loose stone over packed dirt. He had walked this driveway 10,000 times. His feet remembered before his head did. He had taken maybe 8 steps when the front door opened. A woman stepped onto the porch. Late 20s, dark natural hair, pulled back flannel shirt, with the sleeves rolled past her elbows. She stood at the top of the steps with her arms at her sides, not crossed, not reaching for anything, just there, holding her ground without making a production of it. Behind her, barely visible through the screen door, another figure. Same height, same general shape, watching with a different quality of attention. Sideways, like she was working out angles. The woman on the porch did not say hello. She said, "Can I help you?" Not a question. The shape of one. Corbett stopped. Huck stopped beside him. "My name is Corbett Holden. This farm belonged to my parents. The county has filed for tax delinquency on the property. I'm here to settle it." She did not react the way people react when they have been caught doing something wrong. Her expression shifted. Something behind her eyes adjusted. The recalibration of someone who has been managing difficult situations for a long time and is deciding whether this one qualifies as dangerous. "We've been here 5 years," she said. "We didn't know anyone owned it." "I know that." She held his eyes. "I'm Sadie Wren. My sister Renee is inside." The silence that followed was strange. The quiet of two true things sitting in the same space without resolving each other. She had not known. He had not been here. Both facts were real. Neither canceled the other out. Then the screen door swung open with a crack. A small figure came out fast, like something released under pressure. 5 years old. Small but absolutely certain of himself. He was carrying a rifle, wooden, roughly made, one end clearly a barrel, one end clearly a stock. The whole thing painted with what appeared to be red nail polish, for reasons Corbett chose not to examine right now. The boy planted his feet at the top of the steps, pointed the rifle directly at Corbett's chest. No wobble. Completely level. "Don't move," the boy said. "You need to leave right now. This is our house." Corbett did not move. Huck sat down. Corbett looked at the boy, then at the rifle, then at Sadie, who had closed her eyes in the particular way of a person enduring something they cannot prevent, then back at the boy. He raised both hands slowly. "All right," he said. "I surrender." The boy blinked. Completely. "It means you win." The boy looked at Huck, skeptical now. "What about the dog?" "Huck surrenders too." Huck lay flat on the gravel with his chin between his front paws. The boy stared at this for a long moment. He had not been expecting full surrender. He was clearly working out what to do with it. "Eli," Sadie said. Her voice was firm. "Come inside. But he has papers." He showed her from the driveway. "Come inside." Eli lowered the wooden rifle approximately 2 inches. Then he looked at Huck again. Huck thumped his tail once against the gravel, one slow thump, which was apparently sufficient. Eli walked down the steps, sat directly next to Huck, and placed one hand on the dog's back with the authority of someone who had just been assigned an important function. The tension did not disappear. but it got smaller, small enough to work around. Corbett reached into his jacket. Both women stiffened slightly, just enough to notice. He slowed his hand, drew out the folded documents, the tax notice, the deed paperwork, the letter from the county recorder, and held them towards Sadie without stepping closer. She came down the steps and took them. She read without speaking. That kind of composure is not something you are born with. It is built from years of needing it and not having anything else. She handed the pages to Renee without a word. Renee read faster, looked up at Corbett, looked at Sadie. "It's real," Renee said. "I can see that." Sadie handed the documents back to Corbett. "We haven't damaged anything," she said. "We've repaired things." The roof over the back bedroom was open when we arrived. One window was broken. The porch rail on the left side had pulled away from the post. "We fixed everything. We've grown food on the land. We haven't sold anything from the property itself. Only what we've raised." Corbett nodded. He looked past her at the front door, which stood open. From the driveway, he could see the hallway. The floor swept clean, a coat hook on the wall with a child's jacket and a woman's scarf. His mother had put up that coat hook. He had stood on a chair beside her, holding the level while she drilled. He was 9 years old. She had been frustrated with the angle for 3 days before she was satisfied. Something in his chest moved. Not painfully, just moved. "I'm not calling anyone," he said. Sadie's shoulders dropped a fraction. The first loosening of something that had been held very tight for a very long time. He stepped up onto the porch, stopped in the doorway. He had been building readiness for this moment since Casper. Since he turned onto Holden Road, he had constructed it carefully. The way you build something that needs to hold weight. It held for about 4 seconds. Then he saw the photograph. Left wall of the hallway. A frame he recognized, dark wood, slightly oval, the kind his mother had found at a church sale and refinished herself with a stain that smelled like vinegar for a week. She had been proud of that frame, told him about it on a phone call like he could see it through the receiver. The photograph inside was one he had never seen. His parents standing in front of the farmhouse, younger than he last remembered them. His father in his mid-40s, his mother the same. Her head turned towards something just off camera, caught mid-laugh. He had forgotten that laugh. He had forgotten the shape of it on her face. Beside his parents, slightly to the right, stood a man, 50s, heavy through the shoulders, smiling in the careful way of someone very aware of how they look when they smile. Corbett studied the face. He did not know it. Not yet. But something registered below the level of recognition. A wrongness he could not name because he did not have enough information to name it yet. He filed it away. "Where did this come from?" he said. Sadie came to stand beside him. "We found it under the floorboards in the back bedroom, when we replaced a section of the subfloor that had gone soft. There was a loose board, underneath it several things. That photograph was one of them. You don't know who the man is, no? We thought maybe a family friend." Corbett looked at the photograph a moment longer. His father was not a man who hid things. Thomas Holden was the most straightforward person Corbett had ever known. A farmer, a plain speaker, a man who kept everything in its proper place and said what he meant. He did not hide things because he had never thought he had anything that needed hiding. So why was this under a floorboard? He stepped fully into the house. The air did not carry the stale weight of a place abandoned. Someone had swept the floor, not perfectly, but with care. Boards that should have rotted had been replaced with mismatched lumber that did not look beautiful but held solid underfoot. A fire in the wood stove. On the kitchen table, visible from the hallway, a jar of wildflowers and a coffee can. This was not survival by accident. Someone had decided this place was worth keeping, and then done the work. He was still standing there when the back door opened. Slow footsteps. Unhurried. The sound of someone who moves at their own pace and does not apologize for it. An older woman, late 60s, white hair cut short and close, hands that showed decades of use, not just physical work, but the layered quality of someone who had grated papers and kneaded dough and planted things and turned pages. All of it leaving its mark on the same pair of hands. She carried a basket of garden vegetables. She stopped when she saw Corbett. He stopped looking at the hallway. They looked at each other. She said, "You have your mother's eyes, not your mother's name. Not I knew your parents. Just the eyes." As if that was the essential fact and everything else could follow in its own time. Corbett did not answer immediately. He had heard that all his life. Relatives at the funeral, his father's old friends. The woman at the seed store in town who sold packets to his mother every spring. Janet's eyes, they always said. He had not heard it in 10 years. He had forgotten how it landed. You knew her, he said. We taught at the same school, the woman said. She set her basket on the hallway table. Carver County Elementary. Not at the same time she was there before I started. But she came back once for a book fair. We met maybe 3 times total. A pause. I recognized you from a photograph she kept on her desk. She extended her hand. Clara Tibbet. Everyone calls me Miss Clara. He shook it. Corbett Holden. I know who you are, she said. Simply, without drama. She kept that photograph for years. He did not know what to say to that. Neither did she for a moment. Then Miss Clara picked up her basket and walked to the kitchen like she had been doing it for years, because it turned out she had been. They sat at the kitchen table, all of them. Sadie across from Corbett, arms on the table, meeting his eyes directly. Renee beside her sister, watching with that sideways attention, still calculating. Miss Clara at the end, already filling the kettle without asking. Eli on the floor next to Huck, wooden rifle across his knees, on standby in case things went wrong again. Corbett looked at each of them in turn. Then he said, "Tell me." Sadie looked at Renee. Renee looked at Sadie. 4 seconds of conversation without a single word. The kind siblings develop from living through the same things so many times that words become unnecessary. Sadie turned back to Corbett and started talking. 5 years ago, Sadie and Renee had been moving through Georgia the way people move when there is no center left to orbit. Seasonal work, motel rooms when the money held, Renee's car when it did not. Sadie was 3 months pregnant. The man who should have been part of that had looked at the situation, done a quick calculation, and found a reason to leave. Their foster father had been more direct. Get out was what he said. Not in anger exactly, more like he had been waiting for a reason, and here one finally was. Renee had taken Sadie's hand and walked out with her. November. Cold the way Georgia. November is cold, not dramatic, just relentless. 2 weeks in the car, then a shelter in Milledgeville with not enough beds and a 30-day maximum stay policy. Then back in the car. Then Renee had driven up Holden Road one evening, looking for a field entrance where they could park out of sight from the highway, and she had seen the farmhouse dark in every window. Gate hanging open, weeds working their way up the porch steps. She drove past it twice, then she turned in. We checked, Sadie said. We knocked. We waited 2 days before we tried the door. The lock was already broken. Not defensive, Renee said, just accurate. We weren't going to stay, Sadie continued, just until we figured out what came next. But then Eli came, born in this house, with Miss Clara's help. She had been renting a small place 3 miles down Holden Road at the time. She arrived with a casserole the first week and stayed when it became clear that no one was going to a hospital and someone needed to be there. After Eli leaving felt impossible in a different way. So they stayed. They fixed the roof, patched the broken window, built the chicken coop out of salvaged lumber and the stubbornness that comes from having no other options. They planted, learned what the land would give and what it would not. Tried again the following season. Miss Clara had driven over regularly in those early years, helping with Eli, sharing what she grew in her own garden. 6 months ago, when her landlord sold the rental property, Sadie had simply said, "There's a room." No ceremony, just there's a room. Corbett listened to all of it without interrupting. When people explain themselves mid-story, it is never really about you. It is about them needing the discomfort to stop. He let them finish. Then he was quiet a moment. Huck had moved from the floor to lean against Corbett's leg under the table. Eli had migrated from the floor to lean against Huck. The wooden rifle rested against the wall. Stood down. "You said you found things under the floorboard," Corbett said. "What else was there?" Renee got up without speaking, came back from the back room with a small cardboard box, set it on the table. Corbett looked at it. Not at the box itself, at the handwriting on the side. His father's handwriting. Precise, slightly tilted right. The printing of a man who taught himself to write clearly and never quite made it to cursive. "Corbett, when you're ready." Corbett looked at that for a long moment. "You didn't open it," he said. "No," Sadie said. "Neither of you." "No." He pulled the box toward him. Without planning it, everyone found somewhere else to be. Renee went to check the back rooms. Sadie moved Eli to the far end of the table with a drawing project, his back turned, head bent. Miss Clara set a cup of tea near Corbett's elbow and walked out of the kitchen without a word. Just the box. Just him. He sat with it a full minute before he touched anything. The kitchen smelled like wood smoke and something baked earlier in the day. A smell that reached back past 10 years of parking lots and gas station coffee and motel rooms. Back to mornings that had seemed ordinary at the time and only revealed themselves as something else after they were gone. He opened the box. A photograph his parents in their mid-30s standing in front of the farmhouse the year they bought it. The oak tree barely taller than his father's shoulder. Both of them looking at the camera with the faces of people who have just done something terrifying and are trying not to show it. His father's watch. A Bulova with a leather strap repaired once with electrical tape. The crystal cracked in one corner. His own birth announcement printed from a home computer. Thomas and Janet Holden are pleased to announce, and in the margin in his father's handwriting, already causing trouble. A small notebook, navy blue cover, hardware store variety, $2. His father had kept them for years. Feed schedules, repair lists, weather notes. The working record of a plain farming life that knew what it was and did not need to be anything else. Corbett turned through the pages. Fence repair February. Seed order March. Water pump gasket June. Page after page of ordinary documentation. He nearly closed it. Then he turned to the last page. 2 lines, written heavier than everything else on every other page. The pen pressed down. The letters deliberate. The writing of a man who needed to be certain something would be read. Caldwell Pruitt, $47,000. Do not sign anything he gives you. Not anything. No date, no explanation, just the name, the number, the warning. Corbett read it 3 times. Then he set the notebook down and looked at the wall. His father was not a man who wrote warnings in the backs of notebooks. He was not a man who left boxes labeled with his son's name in case something happened. Except apparently he had been exactly that man once. He had done it without telling Corbett, without calling, without any of the usual methods a man uses to get a message to his son. He had done it this way, box under the floor, name on the side. When you're ready. Which meant he had known something might happen. He had known enough to prepare for it. And what had happened was Highway 16 in December. Black ice, the words impact and instantaneous. Corbett closed the notebook. He sat in the kitchen with the sound of Eli's pencil at the far end of the table, with Huck's slow breathing against his leg, with the chickens outside being peacefully indifferent to all of it. He thought about a name he had never heard before today. Caldwell Pruitt, $47,000. Not anything. That evening, after the house had gone quiet, Corbett went back to the photograph on the hallway wall. The man beside his parents, heavy through the shoulders, that careful smile. He looked at that face for a long time. He still did not know the connection. He did not know what this man had to do with a box under a floorboard and a photograph hidden alongside it. But the next morning, a dark sedan pulled up to the gate. A man got out, 50s, heavy through the shoulders, blue suit shoes that cost more than a week of honest work. He walked toward the house with the ease of someone accustomed to arriving places and being welcomed. Corbett was already on the porch. The man saw him, smiled, extended his hand. "Mr. Holden, I heard you were back in town." "Caldwell Pruitt. I've had some interest in this property for a while now, and I thought we might—" Corbett looked at the man's face. It hit him not like recognition, but like something older than recognition. The face in the photograph on the hallway wall. His parents standing in front of this house. His mother caught mid-laugh. And this man to their right, heavy through the shoulders, that specific, careful smile. Exactly this smile. Corbett let him finish. Whatever Pruitt was saying about market value and tax situations and resources to help resolve things quickly. Then he said, "I'm not selling." Pruitt's smile adjusted, stayed in place but adjusted. The effort showing at the edges. "I understand it's a lot to take in. I don't need an answer today. I'm not selling." A statement of fact, not a negotiating position. Pruitt looked at the house, then back at Corbett, then the smile one more time, working harder than before. "You know where to find me." He walked back to his car, got in, drove away. Corbett watched until the car was gone. Then he stood in the gravel driveway a moment longer. His father's warning sitting in his chest like a stone he had swallowed. Do not sign anything he gives you. Not anything. He went back inside, picked up the notebook from the kitchen table, put it in his jacket pocket, Sat down in the chair his father used to sit in at the table his father used to eat at, in the house his father had bought with both hands and a 30-year mortgage, and left to a son who spent 10 years not coming home. Huck settled beside his feet. Outside, the Georgia morning moved on indifferent to whatever any particular man was carrying. Corbett looked at the coat hook his mother had spent 3 days getting level. He was here now. And for the first time since Casper, he was not thinking about leaving. Sheriff Gus Mabry's office occupied the east end of the Carver County Municipal Building on Main Street, one of those brick buildings from the 1940s that had been added onto twice and painted over 3 times and still managed to look exactly like what it was. A place where official things happened at official speeds. Corbett had called ahead from the truck. Mabry had said, "Come in." Mabry was at his desk when Corbett arrived. He stood when Corbett came through the door. And here was the thing: he knew who Corbett was before Corbett said his name. It was visible in the way Mabry looked at him. Recognition was something behind it. Not just familiarity, something older. Something that had been waiting a long time to arrive. "Sit down," Mabry said. Corbett sat. Mabry was 55, built like someone who had been strong at 30 and kept himself functional without making it a project. Gray at the temples, more coming. A face shaped by decades of knowing more than he could act on. The weight of a man who has had to sign his name to conclusions he did not fully believe. "I knew your father," Mabry said. "Not well, different lives. But I respected Thomas Holden. He was the kind of man who meant what he said." He paused. "I don't meet many of those." Corbett waited. There was more. He could feel it sitting in the room between them. Mabry opened the bottom drawer of his desk, took out a manila folder, set it on the desk between them. Did not open it. "I signed the accident report," Mabry said. "Highway 16, 10 years ago. December." The room got quiet in the way rooms get when something important is being laid on a table. "Brake failure," Corbett said. "That's what the report says. That's what the report says." A beat. "Is that what you believe?" Mabry did not answer immediately. He looked at the folder. "The car was serviced 4 days before the accident," he said. "One shop within 30 miles at the time. Carver County Automotive on Route 9. Owner was a man named Dwayne Vickers. Good reputation. 11 years in business." He stopped. "Vickers sold his stake 8 months after the accident. Relocated to Alabama. I tried to reach him twice in the 2 years after. Neither attempt went anywhere." Corbett looked at the folder. "Who bought Vickers' stake?" Mabry looked at him steadily. "You have a name already. I want to hear yours." "Caldwell Pruitt," Mabry said. "Bought 40% of that shop 14 months before the accident. I found that out 2 years after the fact, going through old business filings on something completely unrelated. By then Vickers was gone. The shop had changed hands twice more. Physical records long since disposed of in the normal course of business." He let that sit. "I couldn't close the accident investigation. Couldn't reopen it either. What I had was a connection that looked wrong and a chain broken in 3 places. But you kept the file." "I kept it." Corbett looked at the manila folder, thought about the notebook in his jacket pocket. His father's handwriting pressed deep into the last page. The name, the number, the warning. "What was the $47,000, Corbett said. "Where does that come from?" Corbett told him. The notebook, the last entry, the name and the number, and the warning written heavy enough to press through to the next page. Mabry listened without interrupting. Then he was quiet a long moment. "Your father came to see me," he said. "About 11 months before the accident. Said someone had approached him about a land development deal in the county. Caldwell Pruitt was brokering it. Said the numbers didn't hold up. He declined. But the approach hadn't stopped." "Did he tell you about money Pruitt owed him?" "He mentioned a previous arrangement that had gone sour. Didn't give specifics. Said he had documents he was keeping somewhere safe in case things escalated." A pause. "I told him to be careful. That's all I did. I told him to be careful, and I had nothing concrete, and 11 months later, I was signing his accident report." They sat with that. An old regret and a newer one in the same room. "He left a box for me," Corbett said. "Under the floorboards, my name on the outside. The photograph, the watch, the notebook. He knew something might happen. He prepared for it." Mabry was quiet for a moment. "Pruitt has been circling this property since your parents died. He knows how to wait, knows how to apply pressure that's hard to trace." He looked at Corbett steadily. He made you an offer yesterday. I said no. He won't stop at no. He'll find a pressure point. He usually does. Corbett stood. Then I need to find the documents my father mentioned, the ones he kept safe. The attorney who handled the estate after the accident, I found the name in the letters I'd been carrying. The firm closed, but the attorney is still in the county. I called him last night. What did he say? Come in the morning. Mabry stood as well. When you have what you need, come back here first, before you do anything else. You'll be here. I've been waiting 10 years to have something real to work with. Mabry met his eyes. I'm not going anywhere. Corbett drove back to the farm in the early afternoon. He found Sadie in the greenhouse, hands in the soil, transplanting seedlings from starting trays into the raised beds. She did not look up when he came in, just kept working. The focused attention of someone doing something that matters. The man in the photograph, she said. Pruitt. He had something to do with the accident. Circumstantial, Corbett said. For now, he owned part of the garage. It serviced the car. The mechanic sold out and disappeared 8 months after. Mabry has had a file for 10 years with nothing to work with. Sadie moved to the next seedling. Pressed the soil around the base with 2 fingers. What do you need? Documents my father kept with an attorney. I'm going to Savannah in the morning. She looked up then, held his eyes for a moment, then went back to the seedlings. I'll have coffee ready before you leave, she said. That evening, Renee spread papers across the kitchen table. Not asked, not announced. She had simply been gone most of the day and come back with a folder under her arm, and now the table was covered. Corbett sat across from her. Sadie stood at the counter. Eli was asleep in the back room, Huck stationed outside his door. I've been at the county records office, Renee said, looking at land transaction history. This parcel and the surrounding ones. She pushed the first sheet toward Corbett. I thought it started with 7 families. She pushed a second sheet. It's not 7. Another sheet. It's 17. Going back 22 years. Corbett looked at these papers. Renee's handwriting ran down the left margin of each page in a clean vertical list. Names, dates, parcel numbers, transaction types. She had constructed a timeline without being asked, organized it without announcing what she was doing, and laid it out with the flat precision of someone who processes the world through patterns and finds the pattern before anyone else knows to look for one. 3 families lost their land completely, she said. Foreclosure. After a land development agreement failed to generate the promised returns, which it was designed not to generate. She turned a page over and slid it toward him. Read that paragraph. Corbett read it, then read it again. The profit-sharing clause in the development contract was built on a revenue threshold that by the definitions constructed elsewhere in the same document would never be met. Not through obvious fraud, through language. Definitions nested inside definitions. Conditions written to appear reasonable on a first reading and become impossible on a third. 7 families had signed, 11 had lost something, 3 had lost everything. Thomas Holden had refused to sign. And 13 months later, Highway 16. Corbett set the page down, looked at the list of names. The holding company that brokered all 17 transactions, Renee said, changed its registered name 3 times. But the listed principals are the same across every filing. She put her finger on one name at the bottom of the last page. Caldwell Pruitt. The kitchen was quiet. Eli was asleep. Miss Clara had gone to the back room with her library book. Just the 3 of them, the table full of papers, the wood stove doing its low, steady work. Sadie looked at Corbett. Corbett looked at the list of names. 17 families, 22 years. His father had been one of them, the one who said no. And 13 months after saying no, Thomas Holden had stopped existing on any road at all. There's a woman named Rita Eccles on this list, Renee said. 3rd one from the bottom. She lost her farm 8 years ago. I know that name, Sadie said quietly. She waits tables at the diner on Cedar Street. She told me once she never understood the foreclosure. Thought she'd made every payment. She had made every payment, Renee said. The development revenue she was counting on never came, because it was designed not to. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Corbett stood, picked up the list of names, folded it carefully, put it in his jacket pocket next to his father's notebook. I'm leaving for Savannah at 4:30, he said. When I come back, I need this whole package organized. Every transaction, every name, everything you have. Renee nodded once. Already planned, she said. He left before the valley lightened. Woke at 4:20, skies still fully dark. No gray yet. Just the Georgia stars going hard above the fields the way they go out here away from town, where nothing competes with them. Sadie was already in the kitchen when he came back inside for the thermos he had forgotten on the counter. Standing in the doorway in a flannel shirt and wool socks, holding a travel mug of coffee she had clearly made while he was outside starting the truck. She held it out. He took it. "Savannah," she said. "Back before dark." Before dark. She looked at him for a moment past the point where the exchange required it. Not long, but long enough to be deliberate. "Drive careful," she said. He drove careful. The highway south was empty at that hour. Just Corbett and Huck and the headlights working through the dark. Georgia in early spring before dawn looks like a landscape still deciding what it wants to be. The hills shapeless, the trees just vertical suggestions, the road the only solid committed thing. Corbett drank the coffee Sadie had made and thought about attorney Wendell Oaks. He had found him 4 days ago, 40 minutes of searching on his phone in the cab of the truck after Eli had gone to sleep and the house had gone quiet. The firm had dissolved years back, but Oaks himself had not gone far. Retired attorneys in small states tend not to. They move to quieter offices, take on less. The work becomes more selective, but it does not stop. Corbett had called at 8 in the evening. 4 rings, then a man's voice. Direct. Unhurried. "Oaks, my name is Corbett Holden. Janet Holden was my mother." A silence. Not the silence of someone caught off guard. The silence of someone who has been waiting for a particular thing to happen and is taking a breath to acknowledge that it has. "I wondered when you'd call," Oaks said. "She left documents with you." "She did. Come in the morning. I'll have everything ready." That was the whole call. Corbett had gone to bed after and actually slept 3 solid hours, which surprised him the way small graces do when you have stopped expecting them. Attorney Wendell Oaks's office was on the 2nd floor above a hardware store on a side street off Savannah's main corridor. Exterior stairs on the side of the building. A door with frosted glass. Inside 2 windows, a desk, bookshelves from floor to ceiling, and a coffee maker that had clearly been running without interruption for a significant portion of the decade. Oaks himself was 72, thin white hair worn close, eyes sharp in the way of someone who has spent 50 years reading contracts and understanding what the words are actually saying underneath the words they appear to be saying. He stood when Corbett came in, looked at him. "You have your father's jaw," he said, "and your mother everywhere else." "I've heard that," Corbett said. "Sit down." Corbett sat. Huck settled beside the chair and put his chin on Corbett's boot. Oaks went to the bookshelf. Not a filing cabinet, an actual shelf organized by a system only he could read. He found what he needed in under a minute. A red accordion folder, thick, held together with a rubber band gone brittle with age. He set it on the desk between them. "Your mother brought this to me a little over 10 years ago," he said. "About 4 months before the accident on Highway 16. Corbett looked at the folder. 4 months. She had been here 4 months before Highway 16. His mother preparing for something she hoped would never happen. "She came alone," Oaks continued. "She didn't tell your father she was coming, which she mentioned, and which I noted." He paused. "She said there were things she needed in safekeeping with someone she trusted. She trusted me because I had handled a previous matter for your family, a boundary dispute with a neighboring property some years earlier. Minor, but she remembered." He looked at Corbett evenly. "She also said that if anything happened to her or your father before she came back for the documents, I was to hold everything until you came for it. She said that specifically. Hold it for Corbett. He'll come when he's ready." A pause. "It took some time." "It did. She said that too, that it would take time. No judgment in it, just the fact of it laid flat. She knew you." Corbett looked at the folder. He opened it slowly. His mother had been a teacher for 28 years. She knew how to create order for a specific reader. She knew how to arrange information so that someone coming to it without any prior knowledge could follow from beginning to end and arrive at understanding rather than confusion. She had prepared this for him. The original property deed, the land transfer documents from when his parents purchased the farm. Clean, complete. His parents' signatures legible, the county stamp intact. No ambiguity, no gap that a patient man with resources could wedge open. His father's will, properly drawn, properly witnessed. Everything to Corbett. With one provision, the farmhouse was not to be sold within the first 5 years of inheritance, and was to be maintained as a family home during that period. The 5-year restriction had lapsed. Corbett was a decade past it, but the will itself was valid and the ownership was unambiguous. Then the other documents. A promissory note, dated 14 years ago, signed by Caldwell Pruitt, acknowledging a personal debt of $47,000 owed to Thomas Holden, repayable within 3 years. Attached to it a letter from Pruitt requesting an extension on repayment, dated 13 years ago. A second letter, 12 years ago, another extension requested, and finally a letter from his father, formal, brief, dated 13 months before the accident, stating that no further extensions would be granted, that the matter would be referred to legal counsel within 60 days if payment was not received. 60 days, 13 months before Highway 16. Corbett set the promissory note down, picked up the next document. A land development agreement Pruitt's holding company operating under a name Corbett did not recognize brokering a development scheme in Carver County. Multiple landowners approached. Thomas Holden had been one of them. His father had refused to sign. Corbett read the agreement carefully, all of it. Then he read it again. The profit-sharing clause, the thresholds, the definitions nested inside definitions, the conditions constructed to appear reasonable and become impossible. His father had seen it, had refused, had gone back to Pruitt about the $47,000, had made a final demand. Pay what you owe in 60 days or face legal action. A man with a fraudulent scheme in progress, a creditor threatening to drag him into court. 13 months later, Highway 16, December. Black ice. Corbett set the documents down. The room was quiet except for the coffee maker doing something thermal in the corner. She knew, Corbett said. She figured it out, Oakes said. She went through the development agreement line by line and traced the language back. Then she found the loan records and understood what the demand letter meant in context. A pause. She was planning to bring everything to the county attorney. She came to me to make sure the documents survived in case something happened before she got there. Something happened before she got there. 4 months between when she came to me and the accident. Yes. Corbett looked at the documents on the desk. Everything his father had tried to protect by refusing to sign. Everything his mother had quietly, carefully assembled and carried to a man she trusted in a second-floor office above a hardware store. Left there for him, for whenever he found his way back. I've already made copies, Oakes said. The first set 5 years ago when it seemed like you might not come. Then again last year, keeping things current. Corbett looked at this man. Thank you, he said. Oakes waved it off, the gesture of someone who does not want thanks for doing what was simply right and a long time overdue. One more thing, Oakes said. He opened the center drawer of his desk, took out a small envelope. White, sealed. Corbett's name on the front in his mother's handwriting, that particular forward tilt, the way she crossed her T's, with a slight leftward hook she had never corrected because she did not think it needed correcting. She left this separately from the documents, Oakes said it was personal, said I'd know when to give it to you. He set the envelope on top of the folder. I think this is when Corbett picked up the folder and the envelope, tucked them under his arm, shook Oakes's hand. Your father was a man who did the right thing when it cost him something, Oakes said. That's rarer than it should be. Corbett shook the hand. Did not answer that. Some things you cannot answer without your voice doing something you do not want it to do in front of a man you have just met. He walked out, sat in the truck for 10 minutes before he started it. Huck put his chin on Corbett's arm and stayed there. Corbett opened the envelope. 3 sentences. His mother had never used more words than something required. I know you think leaving was wrong. It wasn't. Coming back is right. Those are different things. The house is big enough for more than just memory. Fill it. Love, Mom. He read it twice. Then he pressed the letter flat against the steering wheel. Both hands held it there for a moment. Let the moment be what it was. Just a man in a truck holding a letter his mother wrote more than 10 years ago in a second-floor office in Savannah because she loved her son enough to prepare for the worst and leave him something soft to land on when he finally got there. He folded the letter carefully, put it inside his jacket against his chest, started the truck. He was pulling out of the parking space when his phone rang. Renee. He picked up on the first ring. Tell me, he said. Quiet title action, she said. No greeting. Straight to it. This morning while you were in Savannah, Pruitt is claiming ownership is disputed and requesting a court-ordered review. Her voice was controlled and flat the way it got when she was managing something much larger than she wanted to show. If it goes unchallenged, it freezes any ownership confirmation and ties the property in process for months, long enough for him to find another angle. Corbett merged onto the northbound highway, pointed the truck toward Carver County. He filed this morning because he knew you'd left, Renee said. Someone's been watching the gate. He waited for the truck to be gone. I have the deed, Corbett said. The original, in the will, in the promissory note, in the development scheme. The whole picture. A silence. The silence of someone who has been calculating variables all day and has just received the one that changes the equation. All of it, Renee said. All of it. I'm going to Mabry now. He can have the county attorney file a response today. Deed and will as exhibits. A breath on the other end. Drive careful, she said. She ended the call. Corbett drove north. The valley opened up on both sides. The hills he had grown up looking at. The angle of mid-morning light on the western ridge that he had seen 10,000 times before. He was old enough to know he was memorizing it. He thought about Pruitt watching the driveway, waiting for the truck to disappear. The same patients his father had identified 11 months before the accident and tried to address through proper channels. The same patients that had moved on the property 19 days after a funeral. The same patients that had waited 10 years for a son who never came home and then moved again the moment that son showed up and said no. He set both folders on Mabry's desk and sat down. Mabry opened the primary folder, read without speaking. His face stayed level. The composure of someone who has trained himself to receive information before responding to it. But his jaw tightened when he reached the promissory note. A small tension at the hinge. There and gone. It came back when he reached the development agreement. He read that one twice. Then he set everything down and was quiet. 17 families, he said. Renee Wren found them. She's been at the county records office for 2 days. And there may be more, she's still pulling records. Mabry looked at the promissory note again. The date, the amount, the chain of extension letters ending in Thomas Holden's final demand. 13 months. And the break service was 4 days before. He knew you were going to find this eventually, Mabry said. Once you showed up. Once you didn't take the offer. He knew the clock was running. So he filed while you were gone. With the original deed on the record, the quiet title action has no basis, Corbett said. He either didn't know I had it or was betting I didn't know what to do with it. Mabry picked up the deed from the folder, held it briefly in the light. I'll have the county attorney file a response today. Deed and will as exhibits. The review becomes a formality. And the fraud investigation longer road. Opening a case, pulling the old accident records, finding Vickers. That takes time and cooperation from the state. He paused. But it starts with what you've brought me today. This is real material, not a feeling, not a broken chain. Corbett nodded. Pruitt will know, Mabry said. When we respond to the filing, when the deed lands in the county record, he'll understand what you've got. He may do something reactive. Reactive would be better than patient, Corbett said. Patient is what he's been for 22 years. Mabry almost smiled. The corner of his mouth moved. Then as Corbett was halfway to the door, his phone rang again. Renee. First ring. Still at the records office, she said. I found something else. Tell me it's not 17 families. A pause. Not dramatic. The pause of someone who has been staring at numbers all afternoon and needs a breath before saying the last ones. It's not 17. Going back further, it's 23. 6 more families. 22 years was the middle of it, not the beginning. And 2 of those earliest properties were acquired by a shell company that folded directly into Pruitt's current holding group 12 years ago. Corbett stood in the hallway of the municipal building. He didn't start this with your father, Renee said. Your father was just the one who almost stopped him. Come home when you're done, Corbett said. Before dark, she said. She ended the call. He went back into Mabry's office, set his hand flat on the doorframe. Renee found more, he said. 23 families total. Goes back further than anyone understood. 2 of the earliest properties folded directly into Pruitt's current structure. Mabry looked at him for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone on his desk. I'm calling the state office now, he said. Corbett nodded, walked back out into the plain Carver County afternoon. He stood beside the truck for a moment. 23 families. A scheme older than he had understood. His father had seen it, had refused, had tried to address it through proper channels, with a demand letter and an expectation that doing the right thing would be enough. His mother had gone further, had assembled the evidence, had driven to Savannah alone, had understood that careful was not always enough. That sometimes what was coming at you had patience and resources and time, and the only answer to that was to prepare something that could outlast you if it needed to. She had prepared it. He had finally come to collect it. He got in, drove north toward the farm. That evening, Sadie found him on the porch after Eli was asleep. She came out quietly, stood a few feet away, and looked at the dark field without pretending she had come for another reason. "If this goes wrong," she said, "if he finds another angle, Eli loses the only home he's ever known." She turned toward Corbett then, and what was in her face was not accusation, but something that cost more than accusation. Something that required real exposure to say out loud. "I need to know you won't run again." Corbett looked at her. He understood what she was actually asking. Not about the legal situation, not about Pruitt. She was asking about the man standing in front of her, whether he was the kind of man who stayed when things got hard, or the kind who found a direction that felt less like backward and kept going. He had been that second kind of man for 10 years. "I've been running 10 years, he said. "I'm done." She held his eyes, the way she had held them across the kitchen table the first day, measuring not just the words, but the ground underneath them. Then she nodded once, went back inside. She had not fully believed him. He understood that. Trust of that kind is not granted at the end of a sentence. It is built over time from the material of what a person actually does. He intended to give her the material. Nobody slept much that night. Corbett lay on the cot in the back room and looked at the ceiling and listened to the house settle around him. The wood stove ticking down, the wind coming low across the south field, Huck breathing slow and even on the floor beside him. Tomorrow morning, preliminary review at 9. He had been in rooms like that before. Not courtrooms exactly, but rooms where something official was being decided, and the outcome depended on what you walked in with. He knew how to sit still in those rooms. He knew how to keep his face from doing things he did not want it to do. What he did not know was how to sit still with this particular thing. Because this was not a mission briefing. This was not a debrief after something that had gone wrong in a way that had a name and a report number and a chain of command to absorb it. This was his parents. This was Highway 16 in December. This was a man who had been patient for more than 2 decades and had nearly won because the one person who was supposed to come home had spent 10 years not coming. Corbett pressed the back of his hand against his mouth. Let it move through. Just breathe. Just let it move. He lowered his hand, looked at the ceiling, thought about his father at a kitchen table somewhere in this house writing a final demand letter to a man who owed him money and meant him harm. Writing it carefully, mailing it, trusting that doing the right thing through proper channels would be enough. And his mother driving to Savannah alone, not telling Thomas, sitting across from Wendell Oaks in that second-floor office, and laying everything on the table and saying, "Hold this for my son. He'll come when he's ready." He picked up the notebook from the windowsill, held it, did not open it, just held it. Outside through the window, the Georgia night was doing what it does, wide and dark and full of stars. The south fence line he had repaired invisible in the dark, but there holding straight. The greenhouse warm behind the house. The chickens quiet in their coop. His father's land, his mother's kitchen. Corbett set the notebook back on the windowsill, closed his eyes, did not sleep for another hour. But eventually morning came hard and fast the way important mornings do. No gentle buildup, just dark, and then the alarm on his phone at 5:15 and Huck already on his feet. Corbett showered, dressed, jacket the one with the notebook in the inside pocket. His father's watch on his wrist. Crystal cracked in one corner. Leather strap repaired with electrical tape because the tape worked fine. He came to the kitchen at 6. Sadie was already there. Coffee going, eggs in the pan. She moved through the kitchen without wasted motion, just getting things done because they needed doing. She did not say good morning. She handed him a plate. He sat down. Renee appeared from the hallway, folder under her arm, already dressed. She sat across from Corbett, opened the folder, slid a single sheet toward him. 23 families, she said, fully documented. Every transaction, every property, every name. She tapped the bottom of the page. The county attorney received the full package from Mabry last night. She reviewed everything. She knows exactly what she's looking at. Corbett looked at the sheet. She's been county attorney for 9 years, Renee said. She's seen land fraud before. She hasn't seen it at this scale. Miss Clara appeared from the back hallway with Eli on her heels, still in his pajamas. He was carrying the wooden rifle. "I'm ready," Eli announced. Everyone looked at him. "For what?" Sadie said. "Support patrol, during the hearing." "You're not going to the hearing." Eli processed this. "Then I'll hold down the farm." "That would be very helpful," Corbett said. Eli nodded, accepted the assignment with the gravity it deserved. Miss Clara caught Corbett's eye over the boy's head, that look of hers, the one she had been giving rooms for 30 years of teaching second grade. The one that saw everything and chose carefully what to address. She gave him a small nod. "Just that. Just go. We've got things here." Corbett finished his coffee, stood, picked up his jacket. Sadie walked him to the door. Not to the truck, just to the door. "Whatever happens in there," she said. And then she stopped. "No. Listen." He waited. She looked at him. Straight at him. "Whatever happens in there, you came back. You found it. You did every part of this that needed doing." She paused. "Your parents did the work first, but you came back to finish it. That's not nothing." Corbett looked at her for a moment. She was not asking him to say anything. She had said what she needed to say, and now she was just there, standing in the doorway of the house she had kept alive for 5 years, with salvaged lumber and library books, and the stubbornness of someone who had run out of every other option and chosen this one. "I'll be back before dark," he said. "I know you will." He walked to the truck. The Carver County Courthouse was 3 buildings east of Mabry's office on the same street. Brick 1930s construction steps, worn smooth in the center from decades of feet. A lobby that smelled like old carpet, and the particular patience of a place where official things happen at official speeds. Mabry was already inside when Corbett arrived. Short nod. The nod of a man who has done what he said he would do and is ready for whatever comes next. The county attorney, Sandra Voss, was at the table. Files open, organized in the way of someone who had reviewed everything the previous evening and arrived this morning with a complete picture and a clear plan. She was 43. The kind of professional composure that does not perform itself. It is just there like a load-bearing wall. You only notice it when you lean against it and it holds. She looked at Corbett when he sat down. "Mr. Holden, I've reviewed the full document package." A pause. "The original deed and will establish unambiguous ownership with no gaps in the chain. The promissory note and demand letter establish motive. The development agreement establishes a pattern. Together, the quiet title action has no legal basis, and Judge Holt will see that in approximately the first 10 minutes. And after that, she said carefully, we are in a different conversation, one that takes longer, but one that starts today." Corbett nodded. Then Pruitt walked in. Blue suit, dark slacks, those shoes. He came through the door with his attorney, a younger man who carried his briefcase with the careful confidence of someone who had been told this morning, was straightforward, and had believed it. Pruitt took his seat on the other side of the table, set his hands flat on the surface. Composed, unhurried, the posture of a man who had been in rooms like this before and knew how to appear like he belonged in them. The smile was there, but working harder than it had in Corbett's driveway. The effort showing at the edges in a way it had not that first morning, because that first morning Pruitt had held all the information. He had known about the tax delinquency. He had known the son had been gone 10 years. He had calculated that documents from an estate handled by a firm long dissolved would be slow to surface if they surfaced at all. He had been betting on bureaucratic friction. He had been betting on absence. He was about to understand how badly he had miscalculated. Corbett was halfway to the men's room when he came around the corner of the hallway and found Pruitt standing there. No attorney, no witnesses, just the two of them in the plain municipal corridor with the overhead lights doing their indifferent work. Pruitt's expression shifted into something that was not quite the prepared smile, something colder and more deliberate underneath it. "Your father knew signing was the right move," Pruitt said. "He just couldn't admit it. Too proud. And look what that pride cost the people around him." It was a calculated strike, designed to provoke, to make Corbett say something that could be used or do something that could be remembered, to rattle him before he walked into that room. Pruitt had been doing this for 22 years, finding the pressure point, applying it at exactly the right moment, waiting to see what broke. Corbett looked at him, not at the suit or the shoes or the smile working overtime at this hour of the morning, at the face underneath all of it. The ordinary face of a man who had spent 2 decades deciding that other people's land, other people's lives, other people's losses were resources to be managed. He held that look long enough that something shifted in Pruitt's expression, not much, but enough. The certainty flickering for just a moment behind the performance. Then Corbett walked past him into the courtroom, without a word, without breaking stride. Some answers are not for the person asking. Judge Miriam Holt entered at 8:59, 62 years old, silver hair pinned back, reading glasses on a chain. She had the manner of someone who had seen most things courts produce and had developed over the years a precise and unforgiving ability to tell the difference between a legitimate dispute and a manufactured one. She sat, looked at the room. We're here on a quiet title action filed by the Pruitt Land Group claiming disputed ownership of parcel 4412 Holden Road, Carver County. She opened the file in front of her. Miss Voss, you filed a response on behalf of the recorded title holder. Yes, Your Honor. With exhibits. Voss stood, placed the documents on the bench, the original deed, the will, the full documentation of unbroken ownership from original purchase to the present. The tax delinquency, she noted, was in the process of being resolved within the 30-day statutory window. Judge Holt looked at the documents, read without speaking, asked two procedural questions, both directed at Voss, both answered in under 30 seconds. Then she looked at Pruitt's attorney. Counsel. Pruitt's attorney leaned slightly forward. Your Honor, we may wish to withdraw the action pending further review of the presented. I'll make that determination, Judge Holt said. She went back to the documents. The room was quiet. Pruitt's hands were flat on the table. Corbett watched them. Watched the practiced stillness of a man who has learned to perform composure regardless of what is happening underneath. 4 minutes. Then Judge Holt looked up. The quiet title action filed by the Pruitt Land Group is dismissed. She set her pen down. Ownership of parcel 4412, Holden Road, is confirmed as Corbett Thomas. Holden uncontested. She looked at Voss. Miss Voss, I understand there are additional matters pertaining to historical land transactions in Carver County currently under review. Yes, Your Honor, we anticipate further filings in the coming weeks. Judge Holt nodded once. I'll look forward to them. She rose. The room began to move. Voss gathered her files. Mabry caught Corbett's eye across the table with a look that carried more than any summary could. And then Corbett looked at Pruitt, because he needed to see it. Pruitt was looking at the deed, the original, lying on the table where Voss had placed it as an exhibit. His parents' signatures at the bottom. His mother's handwriting that forward tilt the left hook on the T's. His father's more deliberate printing. The careful letters of a man who had taught himself to write clearly. 2 signatures on a piece of paper. Everything Pruitt had been working around for 10 years. Corbett watched him look at it, and he saw the precise moment, the moment when the calculation completed. When Pruitt understood not just that today was lost, but that the position he had been building for more than 2 decades had been systematically dismantled by a chain of careful people. A father who refused to sign, a mother who kept records, an old attorney who kept faith, a son who finally came home. No dramatic reaction, no raised voice, just a man sitting very still while something internal reorganized itself into a shape he had not planned for. The smile was gone, completely gone. What was left in its place was just a face. An ordinary middle-aged face, no longer performing anything, no longer needing to. Corbett picked up the deed, held it for a moment, slid it back into the folder. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say that the documents had not already said better and with more permanence. He walked out of the courthouse into the morning light, sat on the front steps for a moment. Just sat. The street in front of him. Cars going by. The ordinary Thursday morning in Carver County, going about its business the way it always had. He pressed one hand flat against his knee, breathed once. Then he stood up and called Mabry. "One ring. It's done," Corbett said. "I know." Voss called me from the hallway. A pause, the particular quiet of a man setting something down he has been carrying a long time. The fraud investigation opens formally this afternoon. I spoke with the state's office this morning. They want everything. Renee has the full package. 23 transactions all documented. Good. She can bring it to Voss directly. I'll let her decide. She put it together. That's fair. Mabry was quiet for a moment. Your father kept records because he believed someone would eventually use them. Your mother made sure they would survive long enough. A pause. Both of them did their part. Corbett looked at the road ahead, the turn onto Holden Road visible from the courthouse steps. He stopped at the diner on Cedar Street on the way back. He had not planned to, but he had been thinking about the name at the bottom of Renee's list since the night she had spread those papers across the kitchen table, and the diner was right there on the main street, and he had Oakes's card in his jacket pocket. Some things you just do. The diner was half full at mid-morning. Coffee always going. Pie under a glass dome on the counter. A television in the corner showing the morning news with the sound turned low. A woman came out of the kitchen carrying 2 plates. 52. Medium height, natural hair gone, mostly silver. She moved with the economy of someone who has been on their feet for long shifts for many years and has found a way to get everything done without wasting anything. She set the plates down at a corner table, turned, saw Corbett. She came to the counter. "What can I get you, coffee?" Corbett said. "And are you Rita Eccles?" She went still. The stillness of someone who has had their name said in unexpected places before and has learned to wait before reacting. "Who's asking?" "My name is Corbett Holden. My parents were Thomas and Janet Holden. They owned the farm on Holden Road." Something moved in her face. "I know that farm," she said quietly. "I know you do." He paused. "I know your family had land in this county. I know you lost it." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she poured the coffee without being asked, set it in front of him, and stood on her side of the counter with both hands flat on the surface. "8 years ago," she said, "I made every payment, every single one. The development revenue they promised, it never came. And then the bank said I was in default, and I didn't understand how. I couldn't afford an attorney to find out how. And by the time I understood what had happened, there wasn't anything left to fight for." "There might be now," Corbett said. He took Oakes's card from his jacket pocket, set it on the counter between them. "This is an attorney named Wendell Oakes. He's in Savannah. He's been holding documents related to the development scheme that cost you your land. The fraud investigation opened officially this morning. The county attorney has the full package. 23 families. Going back further than anyone understood." Rita looked at the card. Her hands on the counter were steady, but her jaw was working through something. The movement of a person who has kept a particular feeling folded up for 8 years and is in the presence of the first moment it has anywhere to go. 23 families, she said. She picked up the card, held it, did not look at Corbett when she spoke next. "Your parents, what happened to them?" "We're working on that too." She nodded, looked at the card one more time. Then she looked at him, and what was in her face was not exactly gratitude. It was something older and more complicated than gratitude. The expression of someone who has been told for 8 years by circumstances, by outcomes, by the silence of a system that moved on without her, that what happened to her did not matter enough to address, and has just been told otherwise. "Call him," Corbett said. He left the coffee money on the counter and walked out into the mid-morning light. Stood on the sidewalk for a moment, not moving, just standing in the ordinary Thursday that had become something else. Then he walked to the truck and drove north toward home. He was back at the farm by noon, came through the front door. Sadie appeared from the kitchen dish towel over her shoulder, reading his face in approximately 1 second. "Done," he said. "Dismissed. Ownership confirmed." She let out one breath, short, sharp, the kind that comes after you have been holding something since before sunrise, and the reason to hold it is finally gone. Mabry is filing the fraud investigation this afternoon. The state wants the full package. Renee was already at the kitchen table, laptop open, folder organized and labeled beside it. She looked up at Corbett. 23 families, she said. Rita Eccles. I stopped at the diner on Cedar Street. I gave her Oakes's card. Renee was quiet for a moment. The way she got when something moved through her that the numbers alone could not fully contain. Then she turned back to her laptop. "I'll have everything packaged for Voss by 2, she said. Miss Clara appeared from the hallway. One look at the room, at Corbett's face, at Sadie's shoulders. "Good," she said, simply, without ceremony. "Then Eli has been on support patrol since 7 this morning. He found something near the south fence he has classified as significant, and he has been waiting very patiently to brief you." Corbett looked at the ceiling briefly. "Tell him I'll debrief in 10 minutes. He'll want it in 5. Tell him 10. Miss Clara walked back down the hallway. 10 minutes, she called, her voice carrying from the back of the house. Fine. But it is very significant. The significant finding, it turned out, was a very large beetle which Eli had named Sergeant. Sergeant is staying outside, Corbett said. Obviously, Eli said, slightly offended that this needed saying. That evening they paid the taxes. A practical thing, an online transaction. A form filled out a payment, submitted a confirmation number appearing on a screen. Bureaucratic, unremarkable. Except that the balance had been sitting there for 10 years, growing patient in its own way, waiting for someone to come back and deal with it. Renee typed in the payment information and paused with her fingers on the keyboard and looked at Sadie. Sadie looked at Corbett. Corbett nodded. Renee submitted. The confirmation appeared on the screen. Payment received. Balance cleared. Account current. The three of them looked at it for a moment. Just a moment. Then Eli came in from the back hallway in his socks, having apparently been listening from around the corner with the subtlety of a 5-year-old, which is to say none at all. He looked at the laptop screen, looked at his mother, looked at Corbett, looked at the screen again. He climbed onto his chair, stood up on it. We won the tax battle, he announced. And Miss Clara, who had appeared in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel, burst out laughing. Not a small laugh. Not a polite, contained laugh. The real version, the kind that takes over your whole body and makes you need to find something to hold on to. She reached for the counter and then simply decided the floor was fine and sat down on it, back against the cabinets, laughing in a way that had clearly been building for a while. Maybe for 5 years. Maybe longer. Which made Renee laugh, and it came out of her face in a way that visibly surprised even Renee. She covered her mouth, gave up covering it, let it happen. Sadie pressed both hands over her face, her shoulders shaking with something that had been held in for 30 days, or possibly much longer than that. Huck stood up from his spot by the refrigerator, looked at each person in the room in sequence, decided this was acceptable, and sat back down. Corbett stood in the doorway. Miss Clara on the kitchen floor. Renee with tears tracking down her face, trying to explain to a confused Eli why the tax battle was funny, which it was not exactly, except that it was. Sadie with both hands still over her face, her whole body shaking. His father's house, his mother's kitchen. The people his mother had somehow known without knowing their names or their story would come, had told him to look at before he decided anything. He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth, breathed once, let it stay and let it move at the same time. Both were allowed. Eli, he said. Eli looked down at him from the chair, completely serious about the tax battle. Good call, Corbett said. Eli nodded. I know. Miss Clara started laughing again from the floor. They ate outside that evening. Miss Clara had pushed for it, and nobody had the energy to argue. And it turned out, as it generally did, when Miss Clara pushed for something, that she was right. 3 extra trips for chairs, a folding table from the barn. The result was structurally improbable and entirely comfortable. The backfield at dusk, the sky doing its evening sequence orange, then rose, then the deep blue that comes just before the stars. Cornbread, bean soup, the fire pit going more for the company of it than the warmth. Eli updated Corbett on the afternoon patrol in full detail. 2 hawks over the east field. 1 suspicious pile of rocks near the drainage ditch that turned out upon investigation to be a regular pile of rocks. And Sergeant the Beetle, who had been relocated to the base of the oak tree and was reportedly thriving in his new position. Sergeant is a good name, Corbett said. Eli considered this. He earned it. After the dishes were cleared, Eli arranged himself in Miss Clara's lap with the bird book across both of them and was asleep before the 3rd page. Miss Clara looked down at him, then out at the field. Did not move. Renee was inside, already laptop open, working on the next thing. Because Renee did not stop. That was simply who she was. And it was exactly right for who she was. Which left Corbett and Sadie at the porch railing. Not arranged there, just both arriving at the same place at the same time, because there was nowhere else that made more sense. The field in front of them. The tree line at the far end going dark. The first stars coming out over the eastern ridge. The north room, Corbett said. Sadie looked at him. It hasn't been used since I got here. Needs work. New subfloor in the corner. Window resealed. But it's a room. She waited. My mother's letter said fill the house. He looked at the field. I've been thinking about what that actually means. Not abstractly. Concretely. What does it mean? It means a room for someone who needs it. Not a shelter, not a program. A real place for a while. For someone who has run out of road. He paused. The way you ran out of road. Sadie was quiet for a moment. Miss Clara would want to help with that, she said. Renee would set up a system. Rules intake? She'd say it was for practical reasons. She'd be right that it needs rules. Eli would give everyone a patrol assignment. The corner of Sadie's mouth moved. And you'd fix whatever was broken. That's the part I know how to do. She was looking at the field, the way she looked at the greenhouse when she was working out what it needed, not just seeing what was there, seeing what it could hold. Okay, she said, just that. 2 letters, but the weight in them. The weight of something decided between 2 people who had stopped needing ceremony to make things real. Corbett turned toward her slightly. Not much. Enough. I didn't come here for this, he said. I know. Her voice was quiet. I came because I had no other direction. That's usually how it works. You think I turned up Holden Road on purpose? I was 23. It was November. I needed somewhere to park. That was all I was doing. He thought about that. 23 years old. Renee's car. November in Georgia, cold without drama, and not apologizing for it. Driving up a road she had never been on. Finding a farmhouse with every window dark. Staying because staying was the only move left. My mother knew someone would come, he said. She knew this house had room for it. She wrote it in the letter. Said if you find someone already there, look at them before you decide anything. Sadie was quiet. I looked, he said. She turned toward him the same small degree. Enough. I know you did, she said. He looked at her. Not the careful measuring look he had been using since he arrived. Straight at her. The way you look at someone when you have stopped calculating the gap. I'm staying, he said. A fact reported to someone who had earned the reporting. She held his eyes. I know, she said, and did not move away from where she was standing. That was it. That was the whole of it. No ceremony, no announcement, just 2 people standing at the railing of a farmhouse porch in Georgia in early spring, having arrived here by completely different roads and deciding without making a production of it that this was where the road ended and that the ending was fine. More than fine. Inside, Miss Clara turned a page. Eli shifted in her lap, still deeply asleep, and said something that might have been Caterpillar. Miss Clara looked down at him. 68 years old. She had thought when the classroom was gone and the apartment was gone, and the shape of her days had lost its form, that she was at the end of the useful portion of her life. Not dramatically, just in the quiet way that comes when you cannot reconstruct from what remains what you were before. She had come here because Sadie had offered a room and a seat at the table. She had stayed because of a boy who needed someone to sit beside him every evening with a book, because that was the thing she knew how to give, and he was the thing that needed it. She looked at the bird book open on Eli's chest, at the house around her, the wood stove, the mismatched chairs from 4 different sources that somehow worked together, the wildflowers in the coffee can on the counter that Eli had picked from the south field because he decided the kitchen needed them. The sound of a house being lived in, not endured, not merely survived, actually lived in by people who had chosen it and kept choosing it. Miss Clara Tibbett, former 2nd grade teacher, current resident of a farmhouse, kept alive by stubbornness, in need, and the grace of people who show up for each other without being asked, sat in her chair with a sleeping 5-year-old in her lap and felt for the first time in a long time that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, which was enough, more than enough. It was the whole thing. Corbett stayed at this railing a moment longer. Huck padded out from inside and came to lean against his leg, looking out at the dark field. Tomorrow there would be more fence to check. The north room needed a new subfloor. Rita Eccles needed to call Oaks. The fraud investigation was open, and the road ahead was long, and none of it was going to be simple. But tonight the field was dark and wide and full of quiet. Tonight the house was warm behind him. He looked at the fence line he had repaired, holding straight in the dark. The oak tree at the driveway entrance, shaped by wind and years into something that looked exactly like what it was. A tree that had been here a long time and intended to keep being here. He thought about his father writing a final demand letter and trusting the process. He thought about his mother driving to Savannah alone and leaving everything that mattered with a man she barely knew but trusted completely. He thought about a boy with a wooden rifle and red nail polish who had defended this house before Corbett even knew it needed defending. He thought about a woman who had read every library book about greenhouse insulation, because losing half her seedlings to cold was a problem she intended to solve. He pressed his hand flat on the railing, felt the wood under his palm. Rough, weathered, repaired in one section with newer lumber that did not quite match. Sadie's repair's second winter, she was here. It held solid. He had come back later than he should have, a decade later. And the house had been here. The people in it had kept it alive. His mother had kept the documents safe. His father had written the warning in the back of a $2 notebook and left it where it would survive. Everything had waited for him. For whenever he was ready, he was ready. He was here. And for the first time in 10 years, standing on the porch of the house where he grew up with Huck, warm against his leg, in the Georgia stars doing what they do above the fields, Corbett Holden let his shoulders drop. Let himself be finally completely exactly here. Because the road had ended here. And the ending was not what he had expected. It was not ruin. It was not grief standing alone in an empty house. It was not 10 years of absence pressing down into nothing. It was this: 4 people and a dog and a mason jar of caterpillars on a windowsill. A boy who had defended this farm with a wooden rifle before he was old enough to understand what he was defending. A woman who had built a greenhouse out of salvaged lumber and library books. A retired school teacher who had sat down on a kitchen floor and laughed until she needed the wall. A mother who had known. A father who had prepared. And a son who had finally come home. Corbett stayed.